Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 115 based on novel. So let's start. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor drew his sword, and sword light filled the heaven, lighting up the world. His sword skills had countless changes, were as complicated as the numerous stars in the sky, yet simple like the counting rods. Some were straight, some were winding, as if they could transform into all the skills in the world, giving others an indescribable feeling. There was a kind of bearing that pressed forward in his sword skills, a spirit that was like a blazing fire tearing through the bright flowers coming from the reform. It seemed to want to set all the things in the world ablaze, changing the inherent heaven and earth, the never-changing great Tao, to reform everything that is trite, tear open and reveal the ugly faces of the degenerates of the old generation. This man wanted to use his sword to change the empty and trite paths of this world, to open up new paths, and let the world enter a new age. His sword skills had already surpassed technique, and become skills which incorporated his philosophy. Just one step, and he could reach the realm of the path. With philosophy, life was given to sword skills, so his sword skills already had life. Since the path was in front of philosophy, only by surpassing it could he see the path. With only a step forward, he would be able to see the path. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor pulled his sword back and gasped for breath. His injuries were still not yet healed, so his cultivation wasn't like it was before. However, before the previous generation's sword god, he was like a student wishing to show his most perfect sword skill, and looking forward to hearing his evaluation. Superb sword skills, village chief praised. No doubt you're the number one man under the gods, the saint that appears once every 500 years. Before death, I have finally met someone who I can interact with. I've come out this time, just to meet you, to let you witness the path. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor then said solemnly, "Today at Qin Mu Pass, there are 1,000,000 soldiers stationed, many of whom are my students, however, I'm your student. There are also numerous scholars from Imperial College, who had come here to lend their strength in the face of the Empire's disaster. So may teacher please expound his wisdom and dispel our doubts." Village chief smiled. "I dare not, it's just an interaction." The two of them walked side by side with Qin Mu following behind them. Xiong Shiyu raised her head to look at a man approaching old age and a man, at his robust years, with a bizarre gaze while saying under her breath, "In my West Earth's true heaven palace, there are no such outstanding men. With the women of our West Earth in charge, the men are all yes men, doing whatever they are told to do. If the men of West Earth were as bold and as capable as them, why would us women need to be in charge?" They walked into the city, and Qin Mu saw numerous scholars from Imperial College. All of them were sitting cross-legged and waiting quietly. They were unable to hide the excitement that was on their faces. Now that barbarian DI Empire was launching a full-scale invasion on Eternal Peace Empire after it had just gone through a massive rebellion and snow disaster, there was no way for people to make a living. The population was declining, and the people were mostly destitute and homeless. Before the empire could settle down, the rations were also in short supply. Even in the army, the rations were lacking, so many scholars from Imperial College could only save on food after coming here, not daring to eat till they were full. Qin Mu saw Wei Yong, Qin Yu, and the rest. Wei Yong was originally a big fatty, but now he had slimmed down quite a bit from starvation. Only when they reached fall's harvest could this hard-pressed situation turn slightly better. Village Chief and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor sat down, and Village Chief said in a pace that was neither too fast nor too slow, "The purpose of my visit is not to talk about sword skills. I shall only talk about the path. The sword path. As for how much you can take from my speech, it will depend on your comprehension. There was no such thing as a sword path in this world before, but ever since weapons such as a sword were created, a sword path came to be. Numerous soldiers that had come back from the front lines walked over. Some of them took off their armor to sit on the ground, while some just stood and listened. Many people revealed puzzled expressions when they heard the lecture of this elder. Someone said in a low voice, "Could the great Tao of heaven and earth be created? Aren't we divine arts practitioners cultivating the natural great Tao of heaven and earth?" Qin Mu's heart stirred slightly. He recalled his conversation with heavenly Qin Mu about how the great Tao of heaven and earth had changed. The creativity of humans had born numerous great Tao of heaven and earth that didn't exist in the world at the start. It was also that same creativity that had changed the old Taos into something new. When a great Tao is changed, the skills would also change, thus it was known as a reform. Heavenly Qin Mu felt that reforms could touch the benefits of gods and devils. However, what village chief said was much more profound. Everyone was puzzled because they were all people who had cultivated qi, and their inherent knowledge was to learn the paths, skills, and divine arts that were passed down to them. Furthermore, divine arts relied on a path and skills, so if they changed their inherent understanding, one could well imagine how big of a blow it would be to their hearts. "How is a great Tao created?" asked Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. "Walk to the extreme and it will be created." Imperial Preceptor, have your sword skills reached their extremes? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was slightly stunned and said, "Just a little more." Village Chief revealed a smile. "Let me help you." He stabbed at Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, and the scenery around them changed. Thousands of mountains and rivers came flooding in his face, and in a split second, their surroundings no longer looked like Qingmen Pass, or a battlefield with blood flowing in a red river. Instead, it looked like a whole new world that had fresh green mountain ranges overflowing with greenery, rivers rolling into the distance. Each and every wave looked extremely clear and real, while the veins of each and every leaf on the trees and bushes were complicated, without any two being alike. Everyone stood up, and there were even some people that climbed the mountains while some jumped into the river. There were even some that plucked the flowers formed by sword lights, while Qin Mu stretched out his hand to catch a drop of dew trickling down from a leaf. Sword-treading mountains and rivers. This was the sword-treading mountains and rivers that village chief had executed. It was clearly a move that had supreme power, but in village chief's hand, it was completely harmless. Instead of dealing damage, it brought everyone into a bizarre world. It was as if this place was a real world, one formed by a sword path. Even though this situation had a huge impact on them, it was the strongest on Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. His body trembled, and his soul palpitated. He squatted and caressed the ground, then raised his head to look up at the starry sky. Village chief had shown him the true face of the path, allowing him to touch the sword path. Suddenly, he felt that a door had been blown open, and he stood there motionlessly with a blank gaze. Village chief saw this sight and exclaimed to himself, "The saint that appears once every 500 years indeed has much better aptitude than Mua, comprehending the path in such a short time." Qin Mu's gaze landed on the dew on his fingertip. It left him slightly at a loss. A sword skill could actually reach such a level. The sword skill that village chief executed this time was different from those in the past. The sword-treading mountains and rivers showed back, then taught him how to execute the whole process flawlessly, allowing him to learn how to execute the sword skill. Even though the sword-treading mountains and rivers this time was the same one he'd been taught, there was something additional in it that made it different. It was like executing the creation of heaven and earth to create all things. Tao sect's Tao sword used the method of algebra to analyze all things in nature, and then the 14 writings of Tao sword recreated all things in nature, which gave it unimaginable power. The sword skill of village chief, however, seemed to have taken an opposite path. He was creating all things in the world while his sword skill to interpret them. It was hard to say which method was superior, but from a conceptual point of view, there was an obvious choice. Dao sword worked under the expression of Dao follows the nature, while village chief's sword picture created nature, which showed that the conception of sword picture should be superior. Interpreting nature was a kind of learning, a learning from nature. Creation, on the other hand, was the act of making something out of nothing. Based on the summary of Dao sect's teachings, the path produces one, one produces two, two produces three, and three produce all things. Village chief's sword picture had mastered the path to produce all things. The Dao sword of Dao sect was interpreting all things, but exhausting all possibilities. Qin Mu focused his gaze on the drop of dew, which was sparkling and translucent, looking incomparably glossy. In the surface of the dew, he could actually see the reflection of boundless universes presenting themselves in fine detail. Cyan heaven's eyes awaken. Layers of formation markings swirled in Qin Mu's pupils, and with cyan heaven's eyes, he tried to see the fine sword lights, which formed the dew. However, what disappointed him was that he couldn't see anything even with his skill. However, he noticed a marvelous point. The dew reflected external objects, and looking at it in detail, he could actually see even more details of the reflection. Through it, he looked at Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, who had entered some marvelous realm. His gaze may look blank, but when looking into his eyes through the dew, Qin Mu could see countless changes in the arrays of his eyes. By looking even deeper, he seemed to see a world produced inside the transformations of the arrays. Qin Mu stirred up his spirit and maintained the operation of Cyan Heaven's eyes. Looking over, he could see everything even more clearly, and the transformations of the arrays in Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's eyes seemed to open a new world, demonstrating the magic of creation. He had the feeling of being there personally, situated in the world that was born in Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's eyes. He was experiencing the comprehension of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. He was comprehending the sword path, and he was indeed a person brimming with talent. It was no wonder that Heavenly Devil Patriarch, Old Dao Master, and Old Rulai had sympathy for talent such as him the moment they laid eyes on him and imparted the ultimate arts of their respective sacred grounds to him. Qin Mu was inferior to him in terms of comprehension and aptitude. When Imperial Preceptor first saw Village Chief's sword path, he was able to comprehend new things by analogy, and grasp his own sword path. Faced with such a heaven-defying aptitude and talent, Qin Mu acknowledged that his own ability falling short. However, Qin Mu was currently using the dew's power to enter Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's state of comprehension, borrowing it to improve himself. Truly marvelousa. When Village Chief saw this, he sighed ruefully to Cripple. Even though Qin Mu's aptitude and comprehension aren't comparable to those of the saint that appears once every 500 years, but this kind of quick wit and diligence is not something the saint can match. Cripple was proud. As expected of the one I taught. It's as expected of the one we taught. Village Chief added as well. How do you view Imperial Preceptor? Can he be the human emperor? Cripple asked. Village Chief was silent for a moment, then said in a soft voice, "He's not inferior to me and might be even more outstanding than me in the future." Cripple looked at him with doubt. I know you never finish your sentences, but why don't you say what you want to say all at once? Village Chief sighed. I'm very strong and have reached the extreme of sword skills, but look at what severed my limbs the sword. Cripple no longer said anything, so Village Chief continued, my limbs were severed by someone with a sword. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, this saint that appears once every 500 years, might be stronger than me, but if he doesn't have any chance meeting, he will be trapped on Divine Bridge realm like me. If he can't connect the Divine Bridge, there will be no way to reach the other realm, and he will just face the same end as me. Cripple's body trembled. He looked at Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor before turning to Qin Mu. With a questioning look, he asked in a low voice, after you and I die, if Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor also dies, what's going to happen to Qin Mu? I had originally wished for him to be an ordinary person, a normal person, who will live a normal life. Yet he had exceeded my expectations time and again, destroying all my plans for him one after another. I can't be sure about his future. At first, I thought that he was an ordinary human, but ever since I went to search for Carefree Village, I became aware that he might have some extraordinary points. Cripple broke into a grin. Ordinary? Village Chief, you're getting muddle-headed. Is there ever an ordinary Overlord body? Mua is the Overlord body, so how is he ordinary? Village Chief's expression froze, and he gave a forced laugh before continuing, that's right, I've forgotten that is the Overlord body, so it's natural for him to do stuff that is out of the ordinary. Yet he still exceeded my expectations this time. I thought he would comprehend some profound stuff from my sword path, yet he saw the process of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's comprehension in that drop of dew. This is too. He didn't know how to continue. Cripple laughed. Too inconceivable. Village Chief nodded, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. It's indeed too inconceivable. Mua, this little fellow, I thought he would never awaken his spirit embryo, yet he did it. I thought he would be stuck on spirit embryo realm, and never progress, yet he found the follow-up technique of Overlord Body. Ehem, Overlord Body 3 Elixir Technique. I thought he would be like everyone else, yet he defeated all 360 Hall Masters of Heavenly Devil Cult, and became their young cult master. I thought he wouldn't be able to learn what we teach him, yet he learned very well, with the momentum that surpasses us. He smiled bitterly. I thought I would never acknowledge him and never hand my legacy down to him, yet I acknowledged him and imparted my legacy to him. I even handed my burden and responsibility to him. He reminisced about the past with a feeling of wanting to laugh. At first, I didn't trust him and didn't think he could accomplish anything extraordinary, yet every time he raises my expectations higher and higher. In the end, I realize that is still the one I trust the most. In truth, as we raised him up, we also grew from that. Cripple asked with a smile, what you're trying to say is? Village Chief's wrinkles gathered together on his forehead, and he revealed a sincere smile from the depths of his heart. What I mean is that in comparison to Imperial Preceptor, I think more highly of Mua, who we all raised together. The child that was given to us by Surging River in the darkness 15 years ago was born extraordinary. His aptitude isn't as astonishing as that of Imperial Preceptor, and his comprehension isn't as heaven-defying, but there's something about him that I can't see through. It's Overlord Body. Cripple said excitedly. The smile on Village Chief's face froze, and he had a myriad of emotions as he muttered, maybe it's because of Overlord Body. An ordinary person creating a miracle once might be by chance, twice might be by luck, but after 3 or 4 times, it won't be chance or luck anymore. Instead, he is indeed different from others, an Overlord Body that's worth our respect. Our Mua has inherited the good points of us failures, who have hidden in great ruins and learned from our lessons. He will definitely be able to walk farther than any of us. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor comprehended the path, his understanding growing deeper and deeper. With the drop of dew to peek at him comprehending the path, Qin Mu managed to see the entire process as it happened. With Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor comprehending the sword path, he would gain a lot of benefits due to the man being on a way higher realm than him. Even though Qin Mu was still at the primary stage of skill, by borrowing Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor comprehending path, he could peek into the stage of sword path. The benefits he gained from that were unimaginable. Compared to a giant like Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, Qin Mu was only a small child. Yet this small child could stand on the shoulders of this giant to attain a wider horizon. Even though all the people in Qingmen Pass were comprehending Village Chief's sword treading mountains and rivers, those that were able to grasp the paramount marvel within it were few and far between. Most of them could comprehend a move or two, and it may be extraordinary enough for them to last the rest of their lives, but there was absolutely no one that had received as huge a benefit as Qin Mu. It was equivalent to learning about paramount marvels in regards to the sword from village chief and imperial preceptor, these two great sword gods. After a long time, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor woke up from comprehending the path, and there was an indescribable bearing about him. Upon reaching the highest peak, all mountains could be held within a single glance. Now that he had stepped onto the peak of sword skill, looking at all the sword skills and divine arts in the world gave him a sense of depression. There were no more sword skills and divine arts in this world that could light up his eyes. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor revealed a sorrowful expression, but soon after, he noticed something different. He could actually feel someone peeking at him, into his Tao heart, into him comprehending the path. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was astonished and looked toward the source, his gaze landing on Qin Mu. He was stunned for a moment, then broke out laughing while shaking his head. I see. Heavenly Saint Cult Master is really great at using others for his own gain. Qin Mu immediately felt his gaze. There was a light sting in his eyes, and he immediately redirected his gaze. When their gazes crossed paths, Qin Mu revealed a radiant smile. Heavenly King, sorry to disturb you. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor smiled in return. No worries. Suddenly, the mountains and rivers dispersed as all sword lights vanished. Village Chief pulled back his sword lights and said to Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, "You have already attained the path." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor bowed to express his thanks. If not for Tao Brother's guidance, I still wouldn't know when I would be able to enter the realm of the path. The arms and legs of Village Chief that were formed by vital chi dispersed automatically as he said, "Come forward and take a look at the severed section of my arms and legs." I had always left these sword scars alone, never erasing them. In the future, you might meet the god that left me these wounds. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor walked forward solemnly, squatting down to examine the wounds in detail. What he saw were sword scars, which had been left behind on old human emperor by a sword that was stronger than his. A practitioner proficient in sword had been injured by the sword. In Imperial Preceptor's eyes, Village Chief's sword skills had already reached the realm of the path, which meant they were above his. It's just that his chi and blood were exhausted and not flourishing like his. Yet from these injuries, he could see sword skills and a sword path that was even stronger. Do you have confidence in defeating him? Village Chief asked. Not now. However, I might in the future. You imparted your sword path to me and you are also the enlightenment of my sword skills, so you are my teacher. Thus, would you hand the burden that you're carrying to me? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor asked with a grim face. Village Chief shook his head and smiled. There's no need to hand it to you. I have already given it to someone else. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's heart trembled violently, but then he came to a sudden realization. He looked at Qin Mu and asked in a low voice, "The new human emperor?" The new human emperor. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had a somewhat complicated gaze, and a murderous thought even arose in his heart. As the human emperor of the previous generation, Village Chief didn't care about fame and fortune nor did he desire power. His goal was much further away. He didn't set his gaze on the power of the mortal world, thus he was respected by everyone. However, will Qin Mu, this new human emperor, be like Village Chief? Human emperors held massive power, and it surpassed even that of Emperor Yang Feng. Their charisma was even higher than that of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor as well. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had gone to Little Jade Capital before and knew some secrets, like the power of the human emperor. He and Emperor Yang Feng wanted to unite all the sects and sacred grounds in the world, but there were not many that would submit to them. However, it was possible for the human emperor. He could make the sects submit to him. The power of the human emperor wasn't won through a fight, but was instead given to him by all of the big sects and sacred grounds. Even if it was little Jade capital, if they knew Qin Mu was the new human emperor, they would probably support him as well. If Qin Mu got drunk on power, he could snatch the throne of eternal peace, completely destroying the great cause of eternal peace imperial preceptor, and Emperor Yangfeng. If you and Emperor Yangfeng fail, the human emperor will still be around, giving the hope of a hope for a comeback, village chief said. Eternal peace imperial preceptor's heart shook, and he pulled back his gaze. I won't fail. Village chief smiled. I hope you won't fail. I don't want Mua to suffer. Qin Mu walked over so the two of them closed their mouth and stopped talking. Eternal peace imperial preceptor's gaze landed on the youth again, and there was a weird feeling in his heart. This 15 or 16 years old boy in front of him could be said to hold the greatest authority in the world, yet he knew nothing about it. Qin Mu was the current heavenly devil cult master, imperial academician of Imperial College, the successor of disabled elderly village, but his greatest identity to date was the current human emperor. His authority was even higher than that of the emperor and imperial preceptor, but Qin Mu didn't seem to know what it meant, which was really strange. Cripple caught eternal peace imperial preceptor's expression and was secretly pleased. Imperial preceptor probably doesn't know that Mua has the treasure that symbolizes the imperial power of Ling family. If he knew Emperor's disc was with Qin Mu, he would probably jump up and down in fury. Cripple had handed Emperor's disc to Qin Mu for fun. He had studied that jade disc for dozens of years, but he could never comprehend the marvel of it, so it was useless for him to keep it. However, he did know what Emperor's disc symbolized. This jade disc was granted to Ling family by a god, which represented a god giving imperial power to them. It was said 9 dragons monarch technique of Ling family was comprehended from Emperor's disc. When it was stolen, it was quite a huge incident, but it was suppressed by Emperor Yangfeng so no outsiders knew. No one would thus expect that this Emperor's disc would actually be in Qin Mu's hands. With Emperor's disc and human Emperor's seal, Qin Mu was the person with the most authority in this world, yet he knew nothing about it. If this foolish boy learned of this, he would definitely be shocked to the point he couldn't close his mouth. This thought pleased Cripple. Assistant Minister of Ministry of Works Shan Yushin walked over and greeted Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, before saying to Qin Mu in a low voice, Cult Master, the cannons in the flying ship need to be repaired after the huge battle. Can I invite Cult Master to go over and have a look? Your forging skills aren't any inferior to mine, so why do you need me to go over? Qin Mu asked in bewilderment. There are problems with the formation markings in the cannon barrel. After the cannon is activated for 8-9 times, the barrel becomes red hot, and the formation marking in the cannon gets disturbed, causing the power of the formation to decrease drastically and even blow up. Shan Yushin was Heavenly Works Hall Master, so he quickly led the way in front while saying, while fighting with barbarian Di Empire this time, over a dozen cannons have already exploded and over 100 divine arts practitioners died from that. The formation markings of these cannons were designed by Hall of Heavenly Works and Hall of Array Elements together. I think it might be caused by the weariness of the black gold, it might not be able to handle the strain. Qin Mu shook his head. I don't think it's the weariness of black gold. It should be problems with the formation that caused thermal decay. Let me go and take a look. Thermal decay. Shan Yushin's eyes lit up, and he praised, it's possible. But the design from Hall of Array Elements is perfect. I'm afraid it would be hard to improve it. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor raised his eyebrows when he saw the two walking away. Cult Master actually knows the path of forging treasures so well that even Assistant Minister Shan needs to consult him, he said in astonishment. Cripple smiled. Mua learned to forge before. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor took a glance at him and remembered how this shameless old thief had shut on his bed and peed in his teapot, causing his face to become slightly green. Furthermore, the picture of Sword God's back had also been stolen by him. Qin Mu and Shan Yushin came onto a flying ship, and saw numerous officials from Ministry of Works hurrying to repair the damaged parts on the ship. There were a few cannons that had exploded, and there were still some bloodstains on the barrels of the cannons. These kind of cannons were called true origin cannons. There was none on the merchant ship, and Fan Yunxiao really wanted to get a few, but they couldn't be bought on the market. Qin Mu first checked where the explosion had originated, then examined what energy had caused it. After that, he checked the section of the metal before taking a look at the batteries. He mumbled to himself, besides the problems in forging, the formations are wrong as well. However, they are hard to change. With the war at hand, we won't have time to reforge the batteries and redo the formations. In that case, we can only make changes to the cannon. In my opinion, we should add ring-shaped treasures at the cannon's opening and the depths of its bore, using them to concentrate the light. He sliced down a huge chunk of metal from the cannon's body, and melted this piece of black gold with his vital qi, forging it on the spot. Numerous officials from Ministry of Works came over and looked as he forged the treasure. They were all full of praises as they took out paper and brush to record his forging methods. Not long later, Qin Mu forged 2 rings and made formation markings on them. The formations he had marked on the rings were the heaven markings from 9 Heaven's Eyes awakening technique that Blind had taught him. These 2 rings looked like the irises of an eye, just without a pupil. One of the rings was placed in the depths of the cannon's bore, and the other at its opening. Qin Mu transformed Vermilion Bird, Vital Qi into Blazing Fire, and connected the formation markings of True Origin Cannon with the formations on the 2 rings while saying, Hall Master Shan, try activating True Origin Cannon. The energy for True Origin Cannon was supplied from the pill furnaces of the flying ship. After improving the pill furnaces on the flying ship, True Origin Cannons could release their strongest power. Shan Yushin immediately gave orders for the soldiers to start the furnace and rise into the air. The flying ship floated in mid-air and shot down toward Duck Tongue Zone. A beam of light that was brighter than before shot out in a straight line and hit a soldier of Barbarian DI Empire that was cleaning up the battlefield. That soldier had been relying on his fast speed to clean the treasures off the corpses on the battlefield, yet he didn't expect a beam of light to shoot over. He was pierced by the light, and his corpse fell to the ground. The officials on the flying ship were all stunned. They looked each other in the eyes, seeing their own astonishment there. The beam of True Origin Cannon could only reach 30 miles originally, but now it could actually cover 100 miles and more. Shan Yushin personally adjusted the battery again, and fired once more. Another beam of light shot out, and another Barbarian DI Empire's soldier collapsed onto the ground, dying an unnatural death. The other soldiers of Barbarian DI Empire immediately scrambled for their lives, as Shan Yushin fired repeatedly, killing the soldiers of Barbarian DI Empire one after another. None of them escaped alive, leaving only their mounts to sprint back alone to the mountain pass on the opposite side. Shan Yushin touched the cannon's barrel and said in astonishment, after firing 17 times, the barrel is still cool. Imperial Preceptor, Imperial Preceptor. Quick, invite Imperial Preceptor over. After a moment, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor came to the ship with a look of inquiry. It was hard for Shan Yushin to cover up his excitement as he bowed. Imperial Preceptor, we can now capture Barbarian DI Empire. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's heart trembled violently, and he said with a grim face, Assistant Minister Shan, there's no joking around in the military. Shan Yushin smiled. Imperial Preceptor, this is definitely no joking matter. The True Origin cannons on our flying ship could only shoot 30 miles, and on the battlefield where there are many experts, strong practitioners on 7 Stars Realm can execute their sword pellets to take the lives of people 30 miles away. This is why the true origin cannons on the flying ship could only be situated in the middle guard, and they could only fire 8 to 9 times. Now a true origin cannon can shoot 160 miles. It had increased by 5 times. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor jumped in shock and cried out, 160 miles. Are you sure it's 160 miles? Shan Yushin nodded heavily and said, it's 160 miles. Furthermore, after Cult Master Qin's improvement, the barrel won't become hot, and this is the most crucial point, we can fire as many times as we want. The flying ships were originally in the middle guard, but now, they can totally line up and be used to pave the way. Our army has over 200 flying ships, and there are 2 rows of true origin cannons on both sides of the ships. Each row has 8 cannons, and there are also 4 cannons in the front and back of the ships, coming to a total of 40 cannons. With over 200 flying ships, 8 to 9,000 cannons, we can kill enemies from over 100 miles away, purging them wave after wave. We can directly push to the area outside of the city. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor sucked in a cold breath and muttered, Hall Master Shan, this cannon of yours will save a lot of our rations, as well as countless soldier lives. Shan Yushin bowed. This is all Cult Master's work. I don't dare to take his credit. Qin Mu was currently drawing the formation blueprints of Heaven's Eyes. When he finished, he handed them over to an official from Ministry of Works. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor went forward and took a look before asking with suspicion, this is some kind of pupil divine art. You used a pupil divine art on the true origin cannon. Qin Mu washed his brush and nodded. The opening of the cannon is the pupil, and the cannon's light is the gaze. This can really work. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was first stunned, then said, there are over 100 pupil skills in Imperial College's floor of heavenly records, and among them, the strongest one is called Sunshot, which even I might not be able to cultivate. I have recorded the formation markings of Sunshot Divine Eyes, but could you create such a huge cannon? His vital chi burst forth and layers of formation markings appeared, transforming into an incomparably complicated pupil. Qin Mu examined it in detail, and his body suddenly shrank. He walked among the formation markings, then his body returned to normal and he landed on the ground. He said, this cannon requires many people to create, and needs 2 to 3 manufacturing factories to work together. I reckon only one can be made within 2 months' time. Furthermore, this kind of cannon would be extremely huge, much heavier than any other spirit weapon. Where did Imperial Preceptor get such a complicated divine eye? Great ruins, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said in a deep voice. I was also shaken when I first saw this kind of pupil skill, but can you see what it is used for? Qin Mu shook his head. Slaughtering gods, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said calmly. If you can create it, you will be the number 1 in heavenly works in the world. The cannon you will make might be able to kill gods. Qin Mu immediately waved his hand and said extremely sincerely, I don't dare to call myself number 1 in heavenly works, I'm just number 2. This video will end here.